My name is Claire, and my early years were simple and happy, at least that's what I remember. My parents both worked at the local factory, a steady job that kept food on our table and a roof over our heads. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. I was only 6 when the factory declared bankruptcy, leaving both my parents jobless in one devastating blow. I remember the night they sat me down in our small living room. Mom's eyes were red from crying, though she tried to hide it with a forced smile. Dad kept fidgeting with his wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd come to recognize. "Claire, sweetie," Mom began, her voice trembling slightly. "We need to tell you something important. Your father's old friend has offered us a business opportunity in another state," Dad continued, trying to sound optimistic. "It's a fresh start for all of us." I didn't fully understand what was happening until they explained that I would be staying with Grandma while they got everything sorted out. They promised it would be temporary, just until they could establish themselves in the new place. The next day, I found myself in Grandma's cozy house, surrounded by the smell of fresh-baked cookies and the gentle whirring of her old ceiling fan. She did her best to make the transition easier, but nothing could fill the void left by my parents' absence. They called regularly, at first, every few days, then weekly, then whenever they had time. Each call followed the same pattern. They'd tell me about their growing business, promise to visit soon, and assure me they were working hard to create a better future for all of us. Life with Grandma settled into a comfortable routine. She was patient, kind, and always made sure I felt loved. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being left behind, especially during school events when other kids' parents would show up with cameras and proud smiles. Then, for years later, everything changed again. I was 10 when they showed up unannounced on Grandma's doorstep, not to take me home as I'd hoped, but to add another child to Grandma's care. My 2-year-old sister, Sarah, clung to Mom's leg as they explained that their business demanded too much time for proper parenting. "We're doing this for their future," I overheard Dad telling Grandma in the kitchen that night. "We'll send more than enough money for both girls. You can hire help, whatever you need." Grandma's response was firm but tired. "If you're going to do this, we need to make it official. No more informal arrangements." That's how, in one afternoon, my parents legally transferred their parental rights to Grandma. They signed the papers with practiced efficiency, as if they were closing another business deal. The first nanny Grandma hired was Mrs. Peterson, a sweet lady in her 50s, with decades of childcare experience. She lasted exactly 2 days. Sarah would scream the moment I left for school, her tiny face turning red as she reached desperately for me. "I'm so sorry," Mrs. Peterson said, gathering her things after another failed attempt. "In all my years, I've never seen such separation anxiety." Grandma tried 5 more nannies over the next few months. Each one came highly recommended, each one left defeated. Sarah would throw herself on the floor, kick and scream, or hide under furniture, anything to avoid being left with a stranger. "No, want Claire, Claire," became her daily mantra. I remember one particular morning when Ms. Rodriguez, our third nanny, tried to read Sarah a story. My sister took one look at the book, threw it across the room, and ran to me, wrapping her little arms around my legs. "Claire, stay," she demanded, tears streaming down her face. That's when I started taking more responsibility. I was only 10, but I learned to change diapers, prepare simple meals, and handle Sarah's bedtime routine. At first, money wasn't an issue. Mom and Dad sent generous monthly payments, more than enough for Grandma to keep trying with different nannies and still have plenty left over for our needs. We had new clothes, good food, and even some extras. Sarah's room was filled with educational toys, and I got a new bicycle for my 11th birthday. But then the payments started becoming irregular. Sometimes they'd send less than promised, other times nothing at all. Their excuses varied: business was slow, investments needed time, the market was down. Grandma started cutting corners. No more new clothes unless we absolutely needed them. Generic brands instead of name brand cereals. Careful budgeting of utilities. She tried to hide her worry, but I'd catch her at the kitchen table late at night, calculator in hand, trying to make the numbers work. By the time I was finishing high school, the situation had become dire. The promised college fund? Non-existent. My parents had completely dropped off the radar, no calls, no money, no explanation. My final report card came with a full scholarship offer to State University, but even with that, we couldn't afford the remaining costs. The trading company downtown is hiring, I said firmly. They offer health insurance and steady pay. We need that more than I need college right now. The next week, I started my job as a junior sales associate at Marshall Trading Company. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough to keep food on the table and Sarah in school clothes. College would have to wait. Grandma's death hit us like a thunderbolt on a clear day. One morning, she just didn't wake up. Sarah was 16, and I was 24. We stood together at the funeral, just the two of us, watching as they lowered the casket into the ground. Our parents didn't show up, didn't even send flowers or a card. Life got harder after that. I picked up every extra shift I could at Marshall Trading. Weekends? I worked them. Holiday pay? I volunteered first. Office party planning committee? Sign me up, it came with a small stipend. Every extra dollar went into what I called Sarah's future fund. My coworker Jenny would constantly try to drag me out to bars or set me up on dates. "Claire, you're wasting your youth," she'd say, perched on the edge of my desk during lunch breaks. "That cute guy from accounting asked about you again." "No time for dating," I'd reply, not even looking up from my spreadsheets. Sarah's college applications are due next month. Those years were a blur of work, home, bills, and making sure Sarah had everything she needed for school. I bought my clothes from thrift stores, but made sure Sarah had new ones. I ate ramen noodles, but packed her healthy lunches. Every bonus went straight into her college fund. When Sarah got accepted to Riverside University, I nearly cried from relief. We could just barely afford it with her partial scholarship and my savings. Life has a funny way of surprising you sometimes. Right after Sarah left for college, Marshall Trading got bought out. The new CEO, Michael, started making regular visits to our office. He was different from what I expected, kind, down-to-earth, and genuinely interested in his employees' well-being. I caught him looking at me during meetings, and he'd often stop by my desk to ask my opinion on various projects. One day, he just straight up asked me to dinner. "I know it's not professional," he said, looking slightly nervous, "but I'd really like to get to know you better, Claire. Outside of work." For the first time in years, I said yes to a date. Our courtship was simple, but sweet. Michael understood my dedication to Sarah and admired it. He didn't try to rush things or pressure me. A year later, we got married at the courthouse, with just a few close friends as witnesses. We decided to live in Grandma's house. I couldn't bear to part with it, and Michael said it had good bones. Suddenly, life got easier. Michael's salary meant I could finally buy myself nice things without feeling guilty. I got my first designer handbag, started getting regular haircuts at a proper salon instead of trimming it myself in the bathroom. Last month, Michael surprised me with a trip to the Maldives. As I lounged on the beach, posting photos of the crystal clear water and white sand beaches to Instagram, I couldn't help but marvel at how much my life had changed. For the first time in forever, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. The message appeared in my Instagram inbox 3 days after I posted those beach photos. My hands started shaking when I saw the name, Mom. The profile picture showed her and Dad, both tanned and well-dressed, standing in front of some European landmark. "Darling Claire," the message read. "We've just returned from an extended business trip abroad. We've been thinking about you and Sarah constantly. We'd love to reconnect with both our daughters. Your father and I have changed. Please give us a chance to explain everything." I showed the message to Michael, who just held my hand as I stared at the screen. "The nerve of these people," I muttered. "An extended business trip? They've been gone for 15 years. My response was short, "I don't want any contact with you." Please don't message me or Sarah again. We stopped being your daughters when you signed away your rights. Then I hit the block button. My hands were still trembling when I called Sarah. She picked up on the fourth ring, sounding distracted. Mom and Dad reached out to me, I said without preamble. There was a pause on the other end. Too long of a pause. Oh? Sarah's voice was carefully neutral. What did they say? I told her about the message and my response. The silence stretched between us again. Maybe, Sarah started hesitantly, maybe we should hear them out? Just out of curiosity? People can change, Claire. Are you serious? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They abandoned us. They didn't even come to Grandma's funeral. I know, she backpedaled quickly. You're right. Of course, you're right. I won't talk to them either. But something in her voice didn't sit right with me. It was too rehearsed, too uncertain. After that conversation, things changed between us. Sarah's calls became shorter, less frequent. She always had an excuse for why she couldn't visit during breaks: too much studying, a summer internship, plans with friends. I can come visit you, I offered countless times. Oh, this weekend's not good, she'd say. I have a huge project due. Maybe next month? But next month never came. Eventually, the call stopped altogether. I tried reaching out, but she'd only respond with brief texts: super busy, caught up with finals, talk soon. I found myself checking her Instagram daily. Her profile was sparse, just a few generic photos of coffee cups and library books, an occasional selfie. No location tags, no friend tags, nothing that gave away anything about her actual life. Sarah's graduation came and went without an invitation. I only found out about it through a generic post on her Instagram: finally done. No photos, no details, nothing. I spent that entire day staring at my phone, hoping she might at least send me a picture or call to share her excitement. But there was only silence. A month later, she was back in town. She didn't come to visit. Instead, I got a text: hey, just letting you know I'm back. Got an apartment on the east side. Starting my new job next week. That's great, I replied, my heart racing with hope for reconnection. Want to grab coffee? Catch up? I've really missed you. Super busy with the move. Maybe later. Later never came. Weeks turned into months, and Sarah remained as elusive as ever. I'd find myself idling at traffic lights, staring at young women walking down the street, hoping to catch a glimpse of my sister. Then came the morning that changed everything. Michael was scrolling through his Facebook feed during breakfast, coffee in hand, when he suddenly went very still. I noticed the change in his expression immediately, the way his jaw tightened, how his eyes narrowed slightly. Claire, he said carefully, his voice measured in a way that made my stomach twist. I need to show you something. He handed me his phone. On the screen was a wedding invitation from his college friend, James Anderson. Below it was a photo that made my coffee cup slip from my fingers and shatter on the floor, sending hot liquid and ceramic shards across our kitchen tiles. There was Sarah, in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary, diamond earrings sparkling, her arm wrapped around James. Her smile was radiant, confident, a smile I hadn't seen in years. The caption read, "She said yes. Wedding in 3 weeks." I don't understand, I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. She never even told me she was dating anyone. We immediately went to Sarah's Instagram page, the one I'd been following religiously for years. Nothing. Not a hint of engagement or James or anything. Just the same sparse feed of coffee cups and vague quotes about success. But on James's profile, there she was again. Multiple photos of them together at fancy restaurants, vacation spots, family gatherings. They looked like the perfect couple, always dressed impeccably, always at some exotic location or high-end event. And then I saw it, a tag to another account, Sarah Anderson Official. My hands shaking, I clicked the link. It opened to a completely different Instagram profile, full of life and color, and my parents. There they were, standing on either side of Sarah in a high-end bridal boutique, champagne glasses in hand. The caption read, "Wedding planning with Mom and Dad. So blessed to have such amazing parents helping make my dream wedding come true. Wedding planning, best parents ever." Photo after photo showed them together, Christmas celebrations, birthday parties, luxury vacations. All dated back to Sarah's first year of college. All hidden from me. They had celebrated every holiday together, shared every milestone, while I sat at home checking a fake Instagram account, believing my sister was too busy to call. One post particularly caught my eye. Sarah standing between our parents at what looked like an expensive restaurant, all three of them beaming at the camera. So grateful for my wonderful parents who've given me everything I could ever want in life. Your success inspires me every day. Blessed child, family first. With trembling fingers, I dialed Sarah's number. The phone rang and rang, each tone feeling like an eternity. Finally, on what must have been the 10th ring, she picked up. "What is it, Claire?" "I'm kind of busy," she answered, irritation clear in her voice. "We need to meet, today." I tried to keep my voice steady. "I really can't. I've got appointments all day and..." "I know about the wedding, Sarah." The words came out sharper than I intended. "I know about Mom and Dad too. I saw your other Instagram account. I saw all the photos with Mom and Dad. The wedding planning, the vacations, everything." Another pause, shorter this time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder, colder. "Fine. You want the truth? I'm tired of living like you, Claire. Scraping by, shopping at thrift stores, counting every penny. That's your life, not mine." Her words felt like physical blows. "I lived like that so you could have an education. I sent you money every semester." She cut me off with a harsh laugh. "Oh, that money? Yeah, I spent it on Gucci bags and Christian Louboutin shoes. Mom and Dad were already paying for my tuition and apartment anyway." "What?" I felt like I couldn't breathe. "You mean all those years I worked overtime, skipped meals?" "I never asked you to do that," she snapped. "That was your choice. And honestly, Mom and Dad give me more in a month than you scraped together in a year. They abandoned us." I was practically shouting now. "They left us with Grandma and never looked back. How can you just forget that?" "People change, Claire. They made mistakes, sure, but they've more than made up for it. They're successful now, wealthy. They can give me the life I deserve." "So they just bought you? Is that it?" "Call it what you want," she said dismissively. "They're paying for half my wedding, James's family is covering the rest. It's going to be amazing, 5-star hotel, celebrity wedding planner, 300 guests." My voice was barely a whisper now. "Why didn't you invite me?" There was a moment of silence before she answered, her voice dripping with disdain. "Look at yourself, Claire. No college education, living in Grandma's old house, wearing off-the-rack clothes. You'd stick out like a sore thumb. My friends are all from good families, educated people. I can't have you embarrassing me." Her voice turned cold and final. "Do not come to my wedding, Claire. I mean it. Don't try to contact me, don't try to show up. You'll only embarrass yourself and me." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the silence, feeling my world crumble around me. After I hung up the phone, everything I'd been holding back came rushing out. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Michael found me there, curled up against the cabinets, tears streaming down my face. "I heard," he said quietly, sitting down beside me. "I heard everything." He held me while I cried, my tears soaking into his shirt. When I finally calmed down enough to speak, he had a determined look in his eyes. "I need to make a call," he said, pulling out his phone. "Michael, don't," I started, but he was already dialing. "James?" Hey, it's Michael. Listen, I need to tell you something important about Sarah, and you need to hear it before the wedding. I watched as Michael paced our kitchen, telling James everything about our parents abandoning us, about how I'd raised Sarah, about the secret Instagram account and the years of deception. He told him about the money I'd sacrificed for her education, only to learn she'd spent it on luxury items while our parents paid her tuition. I won't be attending the wedding, Michael concluded. And you needed to know why. 3 weeks later, I sat in front of my laptop, watching the wedding livestream. I told myself I was torturing myself unnecessarily, but I couldn't look away. The venue was spectacular: crystal chandeliers, flower arrangements that must have cost thousands, a string quartet playing softly in the background. I watched as our parents arrived, Mom in an expensive designer dress, Dad in a tailored tuxedo. They looked exactly like their social media photos: successful, polished, proud. Sarah appeared in her wedding dress, looking like a princess from a fairy tale. The ceremony began traditionally enough. But when it came time for the vows, James stepped forward and took the microphone. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice echoing through the speakers, "but I can't go through with this wedding." The crowd gasped. Sarah's face went pale. "There's someone missing here today," James continued. "Someone who should be standing right next to the bride. Claire, Sarah's sister, who raised her when their parents abandoned them both. You could have heard a pin drop in that ballroom. Claire sacrificed everything for Sarah: her education, her youth, her dreams. She worked multiple jobs to put Sarah through college, or so she thought. And how does Sarah repay that love and sacrifice? By hiding her sister's existence, being ashamed of her, and uninviting her from this wedding because she's not sophisticated enough." Sarah tried to grab the microphone. "James, please." "No," he cut her off. "I've learned something important through all this. Money can buy beautiful weddings and designer clothes, but it can't buy character. And I won't marry someone who could treat their own sister, their own mother figure, with such callous ingratitude." With that, James walked down the aisle and out the door, leaving chaos in his wake. The livestream continued for a few more minutes, capturing the stunned faces of the guests, Sarah's mascara-streaked tears, and our parents' attempts to control the situation. 2 weeks later, through the local business news, I learned that my parents' company had gone bankrupt. Apparently, they'd been operating on massive debt for years, maintaining a facade of wealth while teetering on the edge of financial collapse. Now it had all come crashing down, taking with it their ability to maintain Sarah's luxury lifestyle. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon when they showed up at my door, all three of them, looking considerably less polished than in their social media photos. "We need to talk about what's rightfully ours," Mom announced, pushing past me into the house before I could stop her. Her eyes swept across the living room, the same furniture Grandma had loved, the same photos on the walls, the same worn but well-maintained hardwood floors. "This should have been mine," she declared, turning to face me. "This is my mother's house." Sarah followed, her heels clicking on the floor, though I noticed they weren't Louboutins anymore. "And I'm her granddaughter. I have rights too. Grandma loved me, she wouldn't have wanted me to struggle." Michael stepped into the doorway from the kitchen, his presence solid and reassuring. I was grateful he was home for this. I almost laughed at the irony. Now they remembered Grandma's love? Now they cared about what she would have wanted? Struggle? I couldn't help but ask. Like when you spent my hard-earned money on designer bags while lying to my face about college expenses? That's not relevant right now, Dad cut in, speaking for the first time. He looked tired, older somehow. "We're here about the inheritance. Your mother is right, this house should be partially hers. And Sarah..." "Let me stop you right there," I interrupted, walking to Grandma's old secretary desk. I pulled out a document I'd kept safe all these years, unfolded it, and laid it on the coffee table. "This is Grandma's will," I said quietly. "Properly witnessed and notarized. Let me read you the relevant part." I cleared my throat and began reading. "To my granddaughter Claire, I leave my entire estate, including my house at 1247 Maple Street and all my savings and investments. She has earned this not just by being my granddaughter, but by being the daughter I wish my own had been, and the sister who gave up everything for Sarah's welfare. The silence that followed was deafening. But that's not fair, Sarah exploded. You already have a husband who can take care of you. I have nothing now. No wedding, no money, no. No sister? I suggested. Because that was your choice, Sarah. You chose designer clothes over family. You chose to be ashamed of me rather than grateful. You chose money over love. I walked to the front door and held it open. Now, I'm choosing too. I choose to let go of people who only remember family when they need something. Please leave my house. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, feeling Michael's arms wrap around me. You okay? He asked softly. You know what? I am, I replied, and I meant it. For the first time in my life, I don't have to take care of anyone but myself. I don't have to worry about ungrateful family members or try to earn love that should have been unconditional. As I walked into the kitchen to make coffee, I glanced at the family photos one last time. Some family trees need pruning to grow stronger, and I was finally ready to let go of the dead branches and focus on new growth.